Hello, how are you all doing? I'm doing alright, though 10 people did unsub last video because I called Cora garbage, which is fine. In fact, I wear it like a badge of honour. You'll come to find that being an arsehole doesn't run in my blood. It's more like it's doing a triathlon in there. And also, there was no counter-arguments in the comments, so I'm going to assume I was right and use it to boost my ego. Though I can't help but notice a lot less people stopped watching the video after I made fun of Inaros, so there seems to be some kind of mutual agreement going on there. Luckily, Inaros has been reworked and given some interesting mechanics. To start off, we'll see how his powers have changed. His passive and desiccation are still the same, restoring 20% of his maximum health on a finisher kill and opening enemies up to finishers respectively, though more enemies have had finishers added, so these powers are more consistent. Desiccation's curse has been changed, so now performing a finisher on a blinded enemy will summon a Sankavat. The maximum number of Sankavats is also increased by 2. This also only applies to blinded finishers, so stealth attacks and ground attacks don't count. His second power, Devour, has been replaced with Sandstorm, which is now a duration-based ability that will pull in enemies and open them up to finishers when it ends or is cancelled. The Sandstorm will also heal Inaros by 50 health per enemy caught in it, scaling off power strength. Elemental Sandstorm remains unchanged. His third power is now Scarab Armor, which sacrifices your health to give you an extra 350 armor at max, scaling off of power strength. It will also now passively use its old augment, blocking status effects at the cost of 5% of your armor per proc. Its new augment is now Negation Armor, which has been changed to block death at the cost of your armor with a 20-second cooldown, but a few seconds after activating it'll inflict you with a heavy slash proc that forces you to heal. Finally, Inaros has a new death state, turning him into a sand golem that punches people to build up a revive meter, which is way better than his old method of taking the world's driest piss on the enemy, though I do now want them to add a skeleton skin for this form so I can take people to the bone zone. So now we know what the powers do, I decided to do some experimenting to see how I could push them. We'll start with Elemental Sandstorm, which, turns out, takes all of the elements of your melee weapon, not just the modded ones. This means it'll waste a lot of time proccing IPS, which isn't really useful for Elemental Sandstorm because it doesn't do enough damage, already opens enemies to finishers, and can't crit. I then moved on to Negation Armor and found a few interesting details. First, the slash proc from Negation Armor won't generate energy from Hunter's Adrenaline or Rage, but if you are using these mods, lethal damage should give you enough energy to cast Sandstorm anyway. Secondly, Quick Thinking will only apply on your true death, so you can't create a loop using Negation Armor, Quick Thinking, and Rage. And finally, Negation Armor will proc no matter how much armor you have, even if you only have 1 point. And lastly, I wanted to test how health scaling affects Scarab Swarm's damage. Turns out it's just a standard 1-to-1 ratio like power strength, so 100% health will give you 100% effective power strength. And it'll also take into account any buffs to your max health applied during a mission. Scarab Swarm can also summon up to 3 Cavats, immediately making Inaros a better cat Warframe than Cora.
I said don't come in here when we're recording.
So by having Desiccation on alongside a Hound with Duplex Bond and Diversified Denial on, you can have up to 11 companions at once. I'm not going to linger on this too long though because I'm starting to feel like I'm becoming the companions guy. So now I've got that out of the way, we can talk about the build. For a start, he doesn't need any armor mods. At base, with a maxed out Scarab armor, he gets a 66% damage reduction, so all he needs is a little bit more power strength before he starts to hit the curve in the fall off of armor scaling. Because of this, I prioritise health instead, using Vitality, Physique, and either Prime Vigor or Gladiator Resolve. This increased health will also buff out Scarab Swarm's damage, so I use Arcane Blessing to top up.
And a tiny bit of volleyball, which is very Italian.
For his powers, I use Stretch for the extra range on Sandstorm and Scarab Swarm, and Intensify with Power Drift to bring Inaros' max armor up to 747, or a 71.5% damage reduction.
I put a tiny bit of oil in the pan.
Arcane Intensify is great since it's easy to heal with your Sandstorm, and you can quite easily get that 30% additional power strength. I also like to use Malt Augmented for that final little bit of extra power strength, which also brings me up to 1062 armor or a 78% damage reduction.
Splash of volleyball.
For energy, I use Hunter's Adrenaline. Since you're going to be tanking off your health anyway, you might as well get some extra energy for it. You may also want to use Endurance Drift in place of Power Drift, but that's up to your preference. For augments, I use Negation Armor since it's a nice fallback to have, and unlike Pablo says,
the hardest thing to do on Inaros, which is dying.
It's actually quite easy to get killed as Inaros, though the new death state does help a lot. But then I also use Rapid Resilience with it. Since Rapid Resilience reduces the duration of status effects by 75%, it means that Negation Armor's slash proc will only proc once, and does nowhere near as much damage. Finally, I've got Elemental Sandstorm. Its extra 50% on Rage is useful for healing, but its 100% base status chance, which scales with power strength, is really useful. But with this build, you'll get a 235% status chance. As said earlier, Elemental Sandstorm doesn't just take the modded elements, but also the IPS off your weapon, meaning you'll be getting cock-blocked by IPS most of the time. For this reason, I suggest using a weapon that's limited on its elements, like personally, I prefer the Echine. I use it because it only does impact damage, so it'll prioritise my modded elements instead. And its ground finisher attacks hit a large area, so I can hit multiple enemies at once. As far as elements go, I tend to put on Viral to prime a massive area, then either use heat damage with Archon Vitality for some extra damage, or use electric damage with Archon Stretch for some energy regeneration. And finally, I use melee exposure since it'll actually apply to Elemental Sandstorm and give it corrosive procs. And since now my Sandstorm and my Scarabs will apply corrosive procs consistently, I also decided to add on 2 Emerald Shards. Using this setup with heat can kill level 2 25 bombards with just a few spins. For Helminth, I removed Desiccation and I put an Elemental Ward set to heat. This synergizes really well as it allows strength mods to buff out his health, which then buffs Scarab Swarm. In total, at maximum strength with this build, you'll be at 11,445 HP, or 51,979 effective health at full armor.
A little bit more olive oil.
This will also give Scarab Swarm an effective strength buff of 474%, so combining this with Elemental Sandstorm status priming and you can do some pretty decent damage. But decent damage isn't good enough, is it? We want to get to stupid damage, so we're going to have to find a way to increase Inaros' health further. The answer to that is Nidus' new augment, Parasitic Vitality, which increases his and an ally's max health by 4% per stack when linked, scaling off of power strength. But even at base with Abundant Mutation, that should be a 1200% increase in health. Now since it's quite easy to hit 399% power strength on Nidus, this brings Parasitic Link up to 15.96% extra health per stack, or a total amount of 4788 with Abundant Mutation. By linking to Inaros with that much strength, you'll be at 127,075 health.
Volleyball.
And since Parasitic Link is a multiplicative ability, the multiply will apply after mods and arcanes, which is how the 25% strength buff also works. With 399% power strength, Nidus' Link gives you an effective strength buff of 125% after mods, bringing Inaros' 135% power strength up to 303%. This means Scarab Armor can now bring you to 1652 total armor, and gives you a damage reduction of 84.63%. This brings Inaros' overall effective HP up to 826,811. At this amount of strength, Scarab Swarm gets an effective increase in power strength of 5,262%, bringing Scarab Swarm up to 12,734 damage per tick. Which is alright, but not that much when the Onos can do this. And that's everything. In terms of rankings out of 5, damage, he's a 3. He's no Hydroid rework, but with the Nidus there he can push a 4. In terms of tankiness, he's absolutely a 5. Probably one of the tankiest Warframes in the game now. And in terms of utility, it's probably a 4, carried entirely by his Sandstorm. It's now so mobile, I use it in Nether cells to pull enemies into the kill radius to make the mission go faster. I do feel like they could have gone harder with the rework to give him an army of fallen enemies to command, but I feel like that's where a proper Necros rework would come in. And we all love Pablo unconditionally.
I really know what you're gonna find up here at this nursing home. I mean, an autographed picture of Jesus Christ.
Next video is going to be Wukong, since the Eclipse updates ruined my Gara build, but it improved the quality of life for everyone, so I don't really care that much. Ta-ra for now.